Welcome to Performance Driven Living, the podcast where we question everything. We don't tiptoe around tough topics, we walk right into them. Not to provoke, but to get closer to what's real. You might not agree with everything you hear, and that's okay. The show isn't about being right, it's about being real. These conversations are meant to stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions, and spark something deeper. The views shared are those of our guests and may not reflect those of the host or team. And while we dive deep into health, performance, and transformation, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before making changes to your health or lifestyle. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. But whatever you do, don't stop questioning.
All right, we are back on the Performance Driven Living podcast. I'm your host, Mark Young, and I am joined here again by my friend, Dr. Chris Motley. Like this guy, like you're like becoming a co-host here, I think. Like you're just showing up all the time. I love that.
When I landed on the landed here, I thought, man, I was like, I know Mark's gonna be here, and then I looked on the stories, and you showed up, and the first thing I was telling you is like, it's like Mark got a haircut, and it looks phenomenal. So I'm just glad to be here.
You do.
I do.
So yeah, that's awesome. And dude, like I'm so glad you reached out because we're all here at the Dave Asprey Biohacking Conference, and it's like it's kind of funny because they say it's kind of like homecoming. Like you just walk around. I had to laugh. I was looking for somebody earlier, and it took me like a half hour to walk through the showroom because like just walking through was a dozen stops and a hey, what's up, and hugs and everything else. I'm like, it's so cool to see everybody, right?
It truly, I mean, like watching you go through a crowd, it's like you know everybody. I know a few people. I get that, but when you go through it, but I'm so like grateful when you see friends that come in that have decently their like-mindedness, and I love it that there's this energy in this one spot, though.
There is. And we last night did the inaugural dinner for the Lifelong Wellbeing Foundation.
Oh, what is that about?
Nick Zaldestani. Do you know who Nick is? Nick's been a good friend for years, but he actually started a nonprofit that is actually working in, and maybe this is a conversation, but he's actually been working with Dave Asprey and Callie Means and Del Bigtree and all these big names that we all got together for the dinner last night. And it was a great event, but it was a fundraising dinner that was intentioned to launch Lifelong Wellbeing. And Lifelong Wellbeing is actually the foundation that is bringing, I say it's the on-campus voice for the longevity movement.
Wow.
And it's bringing our industry, if I can say that, onto college campuses and getting college-age students to develop life skills that are healthy while they're in school. Because they're in this, like you're in home and you can start to develop your identity in high school, of course. Yeah. But it's like you still eat what's in the fridge.
That's exactly right.
Right. You still live in a probably an EMF toxic environment and so on because you're subject to whatever your parents are doing. But like when students get out on campus for the first time, it's their first time living out there. It's when they really start developing adult habits. And the entire goal of the organization is to provide that education, to provide that inspiration and that on-campus support so that student ambassadors can actually fire up, much like a Turning Point USA or these types of on-campus type things, to develop those on-campus programs. So last night it was amazing to look around the room because I want to say there was just under 200 people. He actually bought out Perry's Steakhouse here in Austin, and it was Dave Asprey and Candace McDonald and Bonnie Hari and Jim Quick and Callie Means, Del Bigtree. Like it was just the Michael Fishmans. I mean, it was literally the who's who of the event, all showing up last night, and it's funny because what do I want to say? Like looking around the room, if the average person walked in the room, I think they may have recognized a couple people. Yeah. But it's like it was an all-star dinner for our dinner, like for our industry and in the health and wellness longevity movement. Like it was an all-star event.
Well, do they when they go into college campuses? Are there studies or percentages they're saying, okay, we know that kids are this sick because they're all like there's certain, let's say, really like cholesterol, blood sugar levels, and they're seeing a sick pattern, but they know that like the MAHA movement's like we have to help the generation that's that young. I mean, what would be their first steps? Like I want to know, like they go like blood work, urinalysis and stuff.
So I think part of it is they're looking at 8, and you can look at it online. there's 8 dimensions of well-being that they're focused on. So there's spiritual, there's social, there's environmental, there's intellectual. So each of these different dimensions have a different tactic. And the intention behind it is that not only are they trying to get students to live a well-rounded experience, but we're experiencing, I've said this a couple times lately, and that is we're experiencing this tailwind, and we can say it's the Bobby Kennedy, Maha kind of stuff, like that's helpful. But I was just saying to somebody earlier that, pardon me, that while Bobby and Maha and so on have done such a great job of bringing a lot of this stuff to the surface, the reality is we also are living in a generation where our 20-somethings are, I was saying this earlier actually to somebody else. I don't remember even who I was talking to. So when things start coming up a few times, it makes me pay attention.
Yes, yes.
And the one is that, you know, Domo, the nootropic drink.
Yeah. Okay. Now
Okay.
you got it.
Yep.
Yep.
And I was doing some research with him, and one of the things that I'd mentioned was the fact that the 20-somethings, whatever the Gen Alpha or whatever the generation is now, that group of people has the lowest level of alcohol consumption in over 70 years.
What?
That young people today are just not drinking the way that young people used to drink. Like you can see it go up, 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 down. And that's literally just decade over decade over decade. And then it just like takes a plunge since like prohibition almost. Like it's a ridiculous number. And then you also seen right now, a statistic was just released about how the greatest surge of church attendance is amongst 20-something-year-old men.
What?
That young men are going to church at record numbers. You're seeing the big push. What's the big one that Joe Rogan has now been
He's going to church.
actively attending church on a regular basis, and it was a big story. And obviously you see the outspokens like the Mark Wahlbergs and everything else. And it was like, so yeah, I'll give Bobby all the credit in the world for what he's doing, and Maha's doing an amazing job and stuff. But there's already something else going on.
Yeah.
That we're watching a generation starting to become more conscious. I don't even know what I want to say, like what level that even exists at.
Yeah. No, it's
But
true.
like at some level, you're watching students seeking spiritual growth. They're not doing the party thing in college the way that it used to be. And it's like that age group is starting to mature, I suppose, at something different. And that's exciting.
That would be, because I'm thinking like if something went to the height and you drop, do you think like people are in this area, like they're trying to create more spiritual awareness? Like, okay, I'm going to stop going into alcohol, and maybe it's disrupting like how I perceive reality. Do you think that, I mean, this is the thing, is like, what would bring such a big change?
I don't know. I was saying earlier that it's almost like that, like the new revolution is to be counter-revolution, right? Like all the college kids drink, so I'm not going to do it. Like it's almost like the new rebellion is to be healthy. And I think that's actually pretty funny.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
And I'm wondering if it's like this cycle of life, right? Like the 50s generation, who were the perfect family values group, ended up having the 70s generation,
Yeah.
you know, which all the hippie flower child, whatever. And then they ended up having the 90s, which were all the grunge rebels. And it's like, maybe now we're seeing a return, right? Like we've done the cycle, and it's kind of exciting to see.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've heard of the strong men create good times create weak men create bad times, and bad times then create strong men.
Whoa.
And have you ever heard that?
No, not like that. I've heard
Really?
something, but no, say that one more time. Okay.
It's that good times.
Yeah.
What is it? Where it does, it's a cycle, so it doesn't really matter where you start. But good times create weak men.
Yep.
Weak men create bad times. Bad times create strong men, and then strong men create good times.
Wow.
That you end up cycling. And I'm wondering if we're just at that cycle right now, which is amazing, because maybe we're at the cycle that we got so weak that we created a new generation of strong men.
Wow.
And I'm wondering if maybe that's where we are, and that's exciting.
Because you see a lot of individuals like when you say the times create strong men, because there's a lot of individuals. If you ever ask like clients and patients, they come in and they'll say, well, I'm not drinking. And it makes a total point, because I'll ask them, why don't you drink? And sometimes they'll say, well, I saw my dad drink. Like they
Right.
realize like, it weakened me. I'm not doing that anymore. So I just choose not to drink. That is a really profound like cycle. I've got to remember that. I'll watch this. This
And
is great.
it's very much, it's the greatest generation, right? It's the World War II veterans and stuff. And it's like, and that was the greatest generation. And it's like, and I'm wondering if we're back. Maybe we're back in that place. Now, granted, history repeats itself, so who knows? But
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll move back in that direction. I kind of like it though.
I think that when we look at life in cycles and numbers, when they talk about certain cycles, you'll say like every 70 years or so many years, like bank resets and credit resets, and like, oh, when they look at these catastrophes, they're like, oh, some people say in numerology, like we're set for another big catastrophe, and then things happen. That stuff weirds me out, but I'm like,
well,
it happens.
It's just pattern recognition.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Pattern recognition.
That's all it is. It's seeing the pattern and understanding that humans are humans.
That's what I love about you, though, because I can see you looking at something like that, and you go, I guarantee he could go,
nailed it.
yeah, exactly. You were like, look at the news, and you're eating your breakfast. You're like, yeah, I saw that coming.
Yeah, I'm not that guy. I'm not a futurist in that capacity. I'm not that smart, Chris. I like have this tendency to be over analyzing more than predicting. That's my problem. I'm just like, that could be better. That could be better. But,
yeah.
I love watching patterns though. Like
I do too. I like to look at patterns. Like, one of the things that you and I love to see is like when you look at a pattern, I don't necessarily say I want to predict a pattern like in healthcare. But the patterns are so like going down. We see like the Maha movement start to see the pattern. Like, what can we do to make it shift? I don't like to look at a pattern and go, I told you so. Like, I like to look at patterns and go, what can I do to help like create some shift in it, or like create an energy around to make it move?
if it's a bad pattern, yes.
Yeah.
And if it's a good pattern, it's how can we prolong it, because we know it's eventually going to end.
That's the thing though, it's the cycle. It's like you look at something like, is it going to end? And I'm telling you, I'm with you 100%. Like, I don't want it to happen. I want to end, but I'm with you about cycles.
Yeah. Like there's going to be a cycle, and I like where we are right now. I think this movement, I think everything that we're seeing is pushing people in a healthy direction. So when we see that Hall of Fame crowd yesterday who all descended in the same room, it's just cool to see.
Yeah.
And of course, planning it around the Dave Asprey event didn't hurt, because then everybody was in town. But it was just seeing that many people is exciting, because we're able to do that. It was a think tank.
Yeah.
Like, and even the conversations were, how do we deal with college students? Like, what do we do? And it almost was like everybody got together, but it wasn't just to socialize. It was getting together to problem solve.
Yeah.
And that's what actually felt the best out of everything.
That's good.
So
I mean,
I
I can
love
see
that.
you in the beginning of that. I don't try to take away from the combo. I'm just saying, like, when you see problems that need to be solved, especially in the culture, and that is a great area, because, you're seeing kids like RFK Jr. saying like the kids in elementary and middle school, but they do forget about the kids. And I mean, the college kids can be forgotten. A lot of my family's from Korea, and I'm not talking about Korean culture, but one of the things they would see, like people in college age back in the day, like you look at, they would say that Japanese children, Japanese college students and Korean students, a lot of them were passing away from high amounts of stress. And this is no knock or same thing like, but they would die with full stomachs. What they said, they would eat like ramen noodles. And like, I thought it was just a fad. They like, no, all they did was they'd eat ramen noodles for the carb and starch, and they'd get a lot of energy to go study. And they're finally, these people were getting sick, and they finally noticed that the government was like, we can't have these kids just eating ramen noodles all the time. And hopefully like they'll see that in our culture too, because you just can't eat food that has empty calorie in it.
Yeah, processed garbage.
Oh, it is sad, like what they have. I remember in college, like I remember the stuff I ate. I couldn't believe.
I mean, horrible.
I don't know how I lived.
Well, we were talking earlier, like with somebody about how the freshman 15 was normal, and promiscuous sex was normal, and just drugs and alcohol, and we're everywhere. And it was like that almost became how you defined the college experience. And you look at movies, like, do you remember the Old School movie with Will Ferrell? And it's like, there are so many movies from generations that almost make that look like it should be the college experience, so that by the time the young person gets to college, they've watched so many films that have told them what college life is supposed to look like, and then they go act it out.
That's exactly right.
Like,
that's a good
this
point.
is what I was told to do. I was told that college was when I drank under 21, and I was told that frat parties were a big deal, and I was told that this was the deal. And it's like, I just look at all of those experiences that have happened at college campuses all over the world,
Yeah.
particularly here in the US, and we've glamorized it to be those years where you just do whatever you want. It's like it's just hedonism for 4 years while you're studying. And I think looking at lifelong well-being, it's like the intention behind it is, and I mean, I know I'm selling this foundation here, but it's like the intention behind it is how do we interrupt that pattern and get students to realize that like anxiety levels in colleges are at an all-time high, and suicide rates in colleges are an all-time high, and obesity on college campuses is at an all-time high, and dropouts are at an all-time high, and social isolations, particularly post-COVID, all-time high.
Wow.
And you think of how many students all their classes are online now, and it's like they're not getting the socialization that they need, and the intellectual outputs right now are struggling, particularly because students are now leaning so heavily into AI that they're not even learning anything. They're just getting grades for work that artificial intelligence has produced. And so the reality is that we're at pandemic level issues on all of these levels. And I think that's where our community really, it's incumbent on us to step in and make those types of interruptions to try to recreate that experience.
I mean, with AI taking over, like you say, like a person can't think for themselves because they allow AI to think for them. What would alarm me is like even the kids, if they're not that healthy, they turn into this independence. I mean, that's the future. Like, who runs the country? Who runs the world?
Well, I think,
AI.
did you see the new Mission Impossible movie?
No, I've heard it was intense though.
It's really good.
Is
It's
it?
very good. I saw it last week and it was really good, but it's all about like his mission is to stop AI. And it's kind of crazy because it's one of those movies that it's like, yeah, okay, that could happen. So it's intense. It's really good. A lot of echoes from all the past movies. So that's kind of cool too. But,
Yep.
but the idea about AI and my belief on the AI thing is like, I think smart people are getting smarter.
Yep.
Because smart people are finding out that AI can do some of the lower level things for them while they can go process at higher levels.
That's good. That's good.
And I believe that not so smart people are getting not so smarter because they're phoning in work and they don't even know how to recognize when it's good work or bad work. It's like, I use AI all the time and I find it just multiplies my ability to output.
Yep.
But I'm using it intelligently. I'm not replacing myself.
Yeah.
And yet I do see people that are using it to just do their work for them. And it's like, but you've lost the ability to critically think.
And that's the truth, because when you look at people like even on social media, and they'll like create, and we all, they'll create clips with AI. One of the things that, I know we know like some individuals, they just crank out so much social media. And one of the things I've heard in the last few months is that, yes, AI would do this really well, but they need somebody that critically thinks and looks at a clip or something saying like, this actually will not touch the human spirit. This will not change. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. And they say, yes, this outperforms what an AI could actually do. And I said, that's the key, like human spirit, like you can't touch human spirit.
Correct. And that's back to the relational side of it.
That's true.
Yeah.
This is like,
we always go back there. You notice that, right?
the relational side. It is, man.
So I got a question for you because we're talking about AI. We're obviously talking about 100 things, but you're a practicing, I'll say naturopath, right?
Yeah.
Like I know you see people in a lot of different areas of things, but you practice naturopathy and really help diagnose. Do you use AI?
I wish I did with diagnosis. Now, this is what I found. I use all the Chinese medicine, pulse points, tongue, facial features, and some biofeedback with devices I use myself as like a surrogate. So I hope that doesn't confuse you. But AI, I will say this. I've had individuals that have taken their genetic testing and they've taken their gene test and they put it into an AI like ChatGPT. I'll have two stories, but really quickly, they'll put their genetic testing and they'll ask AI to say what are some of the supplementation that would actually benefit my genetic expression when it deals with anxiety and such. So they do pretty well. The cool thing was functioning health. And then they'll go like, should I take cat's claw or should I take astragalus? And they'll go in and ask AI, and AI, because like the human spirit aspect, the relation, I'll go, I don't think with your inability to process this certain type of supplement, you shouldn't take this herb. And AI will definitely say like, you shouldn't take this herb. So that part of AI, like they did on themselves. I had another doc that I knew that he's basically a board certified, he's a medical doctor that does urology. And he will take your urinalysis and he'll run it through an AI app, and they specifically, it's a medical AI, and it will tell you from your urine levels all the yeast, all the mold, all the parasites that you got from an analysis from AI, just from the sets they put. So this is the thing. Is it bad to have that in there, or is it very beneficial? One of my friends started on, and the AI app told him which homeopathics he should take, which minerals, which medications, and you know what? His psoriasis started to go away.
I had this conversation with,
Amazing.
Alpernia.
Yeah.
And we were talking about next year's Changing Life and Destiny conference.
Yeah.
And if it happens, great. If it doesn't, that's cool. No, the conference will happen. But
Yeah.
I actually told him, I said, I think the topic next year, particularly to draw in more functional practitioners, needs to be the use of AI in medicine. Like, because people will fly to hear that conversation, because an engaged practitioner can't ignore this.
No.
And I think it's topical that, especially by spring of next year, there's going to be such an explosion of these types of things. And I'm like, get the function health, get these people in the room. Like, I know several people that are working on medical AI. There's an app that I'm working with right now. Her name is Emma Holsdorf, and she's amazing. Yeah. I'll actually give you the URL. Yeah. You can literally have it, you hold it up to your face, and using facial recognition, it'll tell you your blood pressure. It can tell you your heartbeat. It can tell you your HRV levels. Like, it's holding your phone, using the camera on your darn phone. It will do all of this recognition. And it's like, what in the holy, like, it was crazy. So working with her to actually use it as almost an online diagnostic tool for the company. But this idea that, like, I can hold my phone up to my face and it can tell my blood pressure. Like, that's crazy talk.
That is crazy. But, like, do you think they'll do it though next year?
I don't know. I'm pushing for it. But where I was going with that was, actually, I was on the phone with Al, and I said, look, let me give you an example. I said, I don't know how familiar you are with AI. So it's like, I went in and I use the expensive AIs, and I'm like, so I'm going to go into deep research mode, and I'm going to invite Dave Asprey and Mark Hyman and Dan Pompa and Mindy Pels. And I went through the, and I'm going to invite all of these big name functional practitioners. I need you to invite all of these people, and I need you to get them to collaborate on a diagnostic plan for this person. These are her presenting symptoms. Bump, 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 bump. This is her health history. She's a 46-year-old female, does not drink, does not smoke, has 2 children, is stressed at work, and just literally just typed in with him on a Zoom call, like, a fake patient profile that you would get out of just a health history, nothing crazy, as if I never ran a test. AI did what it did, so on and so forth. And, and it comes out 15, 20 minutes later or something, and I get this huge, 20-page medical profile, based on this symptom, blah, 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 blah. Dan Pompa is actually going to recommend that we work on a metabolic question here, so on and so forth. This could actually be because of this and this. However, this symptom here doesn't necessarily this. We need to rule out that. Like, it was so detailed, and it was quoting all of the big names because it's going to pull from every single one of their online profiles. So it's reading all of their content and everything it already knows about these people. And it's phenomenal to me, the amount of information that is just sitting there. Like, we live in such a time that there is no reason for anybody not to know anything.
That's right. That's right. With pulling all their voices. So I've heard that you could take like a transcript of like the the doctor's voice, put it into the AI, it gets their tone, it knows what avenue they're going to take, like with like how to address like a strep infection or something. It puts all their ideas together and says, this is what they would normally respond.
100%. And it'll actually take all of it, and it will think as if it is them. So it's, when I'm doing it, like, I always pull together, who are the people that if I had to put together a dream team, who would be in the room on my dream team to have this conversation? And I literally invite whoever I want. If I'm working on marketing stuff, like, I invite people whose opinions I respect in marketing. If I'm working on longevity, like, I'll pull in, like, and literally create collaboration teams. And my AI knows me.
Yep.
So my AI, of course, takes all of this kind of stuff and is able to craft it in a way that it actually matches me as well. But it's unbelievable the kind of output. And it's like these types of diagnostic tools. I'm curious because as a functional practitioner, if you're not using it, do you feel like you're like behind the curve on it and now it's intimidating? Is it you just don't trust it?
I would say I wouldn't get to a point where I say I wouldn't trust it. I think personally, if you feel like you're behind the curve, I'm always a person that thinks that if you feel like you're behind the curve, just push forward and catch up. And I think that the reality, maybe, anybody out there who's listening could message us and say, like, maybe I'm not thinking at every angle. But one of the things that we both have seen, like if a patient comes in and literally they've been to certain doctors, they only have a certain amount of time to be in the room with them for 10 to 15 minutes. I would think it would behoove a doctor to like learn how to use it well, because literally if you found your blood work, a person comes in and, granted, I've been in practice for over 20 something years, and there's times when you get tired and some people they're like, okay, I just need to know this, this, and this because I have to get the major parts. But what if you could learn AI and take that person's blood work, take everything that have your dream team, put it into the AI app, run it through and say, okay, I only got 5 minutes with you, but this is what you will need.
So I was listening, what book was I listening to the other day? It's called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy.
I hadn't read it, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
Okay. So I finished that book the other day, and one of the points that was made by the author, which I loved, is this idea, it's a confirmation bias conversation, right? That like what we believe, we find evidence to support what we already believe, right? Like we find what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And if something supports my current opinion, that I'd weigh that fact heavier than facts that actually disagree with me.
Oh.
But one of the things that he discussed, and this is something where I think AI is a huge tool that I put in my belt, is he actually was discussing in there that when people come up with, if I were to put a group of people in a room and say, here's the problem with X business, figure out what's going on and how do we solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost what I would call a primacy effect. And that is, if someone comes up with a first idea,
yep,
that's the one they defend. Because once your brain thinks it solved a problem, it stops looking for solutions.
Oh, wow.
Because
I didn't think about that.
You think about it, you like, oh yeah, that would work. Why keep trying to find it? It's kind of like, oh, my keys are always in the last place I look for them. Well, yeah, if you found them, why would you keep looking? Of course they're in the last place, right?
Yeah.
But he actually talked about the phenomenon that we love our first answer, and then we go to the conference where we're going to go defend our answer, and it's like, and he's talking about collaboration is so important because we go into a room, we think we've already solved the problem, but we actually just got married to the first solution.
Oh, heavens.
And then we hear other people's ideas, and we still prefer our own because we have a problem with objectivity. And I was thinking about it because like when I use AI, like whether it's me working with a marketing client or even writing for that matter, it's like, I'll be like, man, I'm stuck in this area. Like, this is what I think it is, but let me give you all the information. Here's what I want. These are the people who I want to have opinions on. What would this person think of this topic? Like, how would Albert Einstein solve this problem? And kind of throw stuff out there, because what I'll see is, and then give me 5 possible scenario outcomes.
Wow.
And then I get all my scenario outcomes. I'm like, okay, I didn't think about those. Like usually I'll say like 4 out of 5 I've already come up with, but I'll even work on it with marketing plans. Like I'll write the marketing plan, how I believe everything should happen. I got a pretty good beat on that stuff. Like, how do I believe it should go to market? What do I think? And then I will literally ask AI, here's my entire plan. What did I miss?
Wow.
What other things are available that I may not have thought of? And sometimes it comes up with stuff and I'm like, nah. And I'm like, oh, all right, missed that one. And as I relate that to the medical field,
yes,
like if you just saw 3 patients in a row with the same diagnosis and you found out it was the same thing, when the 4th person comes in the room, do you not just go to what just worked for the last 3?
Yes.
Or do you treat the 4th person as an objective n equals 1 case? You can't.
It's true. It's true. Like when you get to, you hit the nail on the head is because you get so used to patterns, and that's why some managers like
pattern recognition.
I'm guilty. I'm like when I look at something, one of my mentors kind of got onto me a few years ago because I'd hear something you tell me or something, and I go, oh, such and such. And he's like, you're letting your pride get in the way. He would say that. He said, it's pride. That's what he'd tell it. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, even though you see a pattern, you need to investigate it. So stop.
Like N equals 1.
You got to investigate. And that's what happens, like, and not to veer off on another side, but that's what happened, like Stephen Gundry was saying. He goes, one of the things that hurt us in the long run was like antibiotics. The point case is that they used to culture and investigate every infection, like a boil or a cyst or an infection, and they would find the actual antibiotic to kill it. But now
we use broad spectrum
to kill it all off. And I'm like, investigation went down the drain. That's a great point, though. I mean, like, finding that one little area that you go, I did not think about that. And that's what we should use AI for.
And I use AI to enhance my objectivity. Because I get married to my solution. I love my solutions, right?
That's right.
They're birthed from my own creativity and imagination. And so I end up having this tendency to, as we all do, this is what works. And a lot of times, like, I will find myself even talking to a client and saying, look, this is what we did for this other person and it works tremendously. We can do this exact same plan working with you. Like, we know the blueprint, you know, and then I find myself going, okay, well, that was 3 years ago.
Yep.
Like, maybe the market's changed. Maybe I need to, you know, start working with my own, you know, solutions and questioning my own whatevers. And that's when I get into the pattern of, you know, how do I use another tool? And it's like I say, I have creative meetings with my computer. I'm literally like, so here's what I'm thinking. These are my thoughts. And I find myself often, like, I'll do it on the drive home. And because I've got my GPT is actually on my phone, and I'll just put it on in the car and I'll just talk to my GPT about stuff on the drive home. I know I need a hobby, but like literally I'll be like, hey, I'm trying to come up with this idea. This is what's going on in my head, because I can say it faster than I can type it.
Yeah.
You know, this is what's going on. I'm trying to find out solutions for this. This is the idea that I'm having.
Yeah.
I'm worried about this and this and this. And particularly, these are the hurdles that are holding me back, but these are the things that I really are good at. And I'm just throwing all of this out there. And then I'll end with, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll do nothing but take my thoughts and organize them in a way that I'm like, okay, like I just rambled, but it's as if I had a secretary that was listening to everything I was saying and then putting it into some kind of presentation format. Other times I'm asking it questions like, what am I not seeing? Like how am I'm blind to something in this, because these are all the things I'm doing and it's not working. What's missing in this equation?
That's beautiful.
And like I said, it's not using AI to do my job, but it's enhancing my critical thinking skill.
Yes.
And like I said, in the world of medicine, there's so much data out there. Take function, right? Like Hyman has put together this tool. Now there's flaws to the tool.
It always flaws to the tool.
Because AI only knows what you've taught it. So all the data, as an example, like it's mostly male data.
Yep.
So does that skew accurately for a female patient, or do we have to have a little bit of sensitivity to the fact that the data is not always 100% accurate? Like what's going on there? And it's like, it'll get better in time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for nothing else, for me, I look at it as really being that the objective partner in the conversation who doesn't have an emotional bias and can point out my blind spots.
Do you find that it would be, even in healthcare, that individuals would respond more positively to something that's more objectively not biased toward one way or the other? Like, for instance, if you said you had, you put in a set of information, it spits out 4 things, and some people would be like, if you knew like a practitioner or human bias was like really biased, you'd be like, I don't know. But if you got non-biased information, if it was truly non-biased, do you think people would take it better? You know, because it's like
I want both.
You want both? Okay.
I want both. Like I want you as my doctor to say, look, these are your presenting symptoms, or maybe there's no symptom at all and you're just looking at a goal.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't believe that healthcare should be symptom relief. I think healthcare should be optimization and balance. And it's like, so if I'm talking to you and saying, look, this is what's happening, I want to figure out a way to optimize my sleep. Or maybe I'm coming to you and saying my left leg is 3 inches shorter than my right. Like, what do I do? Like, here's the symptom. If I put all of that stuff in and you're like, I've seen this before, but let me get back to you. And you go back to your AI bot and you've got so much content, like you could train a bot in no time.
Yeah.
And it's like literally going into this bot content and saying, look, my patient came in, these are his goals, this is this. this is my experience with these symptoms, and this is what I'm thinking. Can you give me an objective look at these things and tell me what else could it be?
That's good.
Because then what it does is it tells you like, okay, number one is what you thought intuitively, but here's 2, 3, and 4 that it could be. And it may make you go, 2, I don't agree with. 3, I think you got bad data, but I should probably test for 4.
Yeah.
Like 4 is probably something I should test for.
Oh, that's
before I plant my flag on number 1, let me at least rule out number 4.
That makes point cases. It makes thought in my head. Some people like that give up coffee for 4 years. I promise that's the point. I gave up coffee for so many years. Like the first avenue would be like, I shouldn't drink it because, there's a big movement. It's true about having mold on coffee. And I believe that it has mold. That's why we have here at the conference, we have great mold-free coffee. But if you had like certain objective points, yes, you could have mold on your coffee, but there could be possibly like a genetic inflammation that you can't process caffeine, which if a doctor didn't look into that, you would stop drinking coffee for the rest of your life. He's like, well, it's just mold. And I'm like, no, you just have a gene that doesn't process caffeine that well. So I see what you're saying. You'd have to have every aspect and have some human input into it as well.
Yeah. I still want a doctor who thinks.
Yeah, but you could use an
AI that can explore options. Like Steve Gundry at the HOS Summit was using a similar example, and he talked about a woman who had, they'd cut all gluten and everything else out of her diet, and her symptoms had all went away, and she was doing great, and so on and so forth. And then a year or 2 later, she started to slip back into some of the symptoms that she was having, and they ended up finding out that, when he went into more of the lifestyle type things, she didn't touch anything. However, he discovered through conversation that her son had moved back into her house, and he was slicing bread on the kitchen counter. And she was so sensitive that anything she put on the kitchen counter, she was actually absorbing, gluten in her system, and it started to retox.
Wow.
And it was like, what an interesting thing. But again, I mean, as a doctor, right? You're a detective.
You are, and that would be mind blowing and numbing, not in a bad way, but like to go through every scenario that you could and say like you as a human, you're like, I went through every scenario, but if you could load as much information to AI and it could give you spit out information like, oh, your son's cutting bread on the counter, and you're like, oh,
that one may be a bit extreme.
I could be, but I'm just saying.
But still, like you're a detective.
Exactly right.
And if you literally are a detective and you've got a tool that can actually spit out every possible scenario, and then you get to pick which ones seem to be the most rational, or then you get to use huge human judgment and say, all right, I can test for that. I can test for that. That's unlikely, so I'll put it on the back burner. Like literally, can you use that kind of stuff as a diagnostic tool and play that out in private practice to get a more accurate diagnosis and treatment plan?
I would say this, with the amount of patients that are out there, we've both seen as many people that come to an office and as little doctors out there, and them being fried in their brain and being tired. A lot of them they're like, I just don't have enough capacity. I think they would have to use AI, because it literally at least give as many scenarios to the doctor to actually go over it with the patient, because you see it as well as I do when patients come in and they're like sick and tired, and they like, after years they found out like it was a mold sensitivity, and you go, man, it'd be great if like a doc could have like taken all the information, stuck it in there and go 5 years ago and just spit it out.
Well, because it feels like a guessing game, particularly for the average person who's trying to figure out their own physiology. And it's like, you're at least a physician. You've got a head start on this kind of stuff. But it's like for an average person to figure out mold toxicity, gluten sensitivity, I suppose, gets some information nowadays. But it's like it's like a revolving door of how many stupid things could possibly going on.
And I think that the resentment factor for doctors and for patients would greatly be reduced if you had somebody that'd be a great assistant. And this is the key, like in practice. And, many doctors go through practice in their lives, and they always say that they need to find that one good assistant. They need to make that'll stick with them, that can read their mind. And I need this person to be with me to write all the notes and then do some investigation. But you are correct. Every great movie about a doctor always had the doctor who was the investigator, who was always the detective. Somehow they see this doctor spending all night, and I've read books waiting to the night to find out something from one person. But you get tired as a practitioner, and now the tools could be used to help you with that investigation.
Well, and you've got so many people to be thinking of at the same time, right? Plus your own life.
we usually don't have a lot. Like I
want to see the tools in place where, and this is, so my bent is that I would love to make that the topic of next year's conference. Like, so I'm trying to sell them on it. Like, how do we incorporate this? Like, let's not fight against it.
Yep.
It's here.
It's here.
But it's not going away, right?
Yes.
It's like trying to ignore cell phones. Like, well, no, everyone has them. Like, they're not going anywhere now.
Yep.
Like, this is life. How do we start to adapt this into treatment? And how do we, rather than, again, fight against the machine, like, how do we just learn to adapt to this and use it better and actually become better practitioners?
Totally.
Using it. Like, that would be my intention.
That would be, if you got, I think I'm asking, like, if you had that avenue where you had AI that could help a doctor go through the steps, could AI help? But I would say that the human touch would be, then a doctor could analyze somebody and say, well, this is like the psychological, the emotional aspect you're going to go through these scenarios. Maybe that's what the doctor's going to guide them through there, like the human touch, or maybe AI could do that too. I mean, like,
it's scary.
I know, like, but I mean, like, literally, if a person's going through this and they say, well, you have a hormonal issue, you've got endometriosis, this is the things, and you got this, and this is a possibility of an infection, you start clearing this out. But I'm like, this maybe AI could spit out something and say, this is the emotional aspects going to happen. Yeah. And then you could be, as a doctor, going, okay, you need to go get this kind of therapy or counseling or something. Like, there's a lot of scenarios that need to be addressed, but that would be a really good, so it's happening. It's here.
The world is already changed.
3 months from now.
Different world.
Because I had one individual who put us, like, from one of the AI apps I had, like, for like one of my Instagram feeds about something about kidneys or something. And they put it into an AI. He just thought it'd be great, you know, to do it. And it spit out information about, like, what kind of people will be affected by this kidney disease. And then he goes, oh man, it's gotten smarter. I was like, what? He goes, well, I put the same thing in the AI 3 months later, and it had 5 times the amount of information that could happen. I was like, it learned. I was like,
and it's forever learning. And I think we need to, perhaps mission impossible, but we absolutely need to, I think for every industry, there's an adaptation that needs to take place. Yeah, I think the medical industry is not any different from that. And we're just seeing so much revolutionary. I'm curious though, how did we get from where we were to where we ended on AI? And like, the conversations with you just kind of roll all over
the whole team's like, they're like,
what are they even talking about right now? Like, Jimena's like, why do I even do all these show notes for you? And then you don't even pay attention to them. But I love this stuff, Chris, and I love talking to you because you're like the frequent flyer on our podcast now. Like, but there's so much good information that comes up from it. And I absolutely love having you on here.
Oh, brother, this is so fun. I just like our conversation. If I don't get to catch it, because he's always on the go, and I'm like, at least we get to an hour just
to hang out and talk for an hour. I know.
I mean, hey, it's gonna be good. I don't mind, like, to me, just catch up and say, hey, give you a hug.
It's all good, right?
It's all good, brother.
Very good. Guys, if you're looking for more information about Dr. Chris Motley, all of his contact information is below in the show notes. I highly recommend that you subscribe to his podcast, Ancient
Health Podcast.
There you go. I knew it was Ancient Health. I almost said Ancient Medicine, so I stopped.
That's a great one. Ancient Medicine would be really good.
That's good. Well, we'll get into that conversation some other time because I'm convinced that ancient medicine is actually, ancient wisdom is coming back into the medical field right now when we talk about frequencies and all this other kind of stuff.
Yes.
And things that they knew back then now actually are making sense.
That's right.
And the world is now maybe ready for it. So that being said, check out Chris Motley, follow his podcast, and learn more about all the cool stuff he's doing. And I know you're backlogged, so you got guests all over the place. How are they?
We'll get you on, like, we're going to have you get back on, like, they told me that we worked hard to get, like, so many, like, in the docket, you know, like, and it's like, and they said, well, we can't do any more because we're like 5 or 6 months ahead and or backed up. And I'm like, I didn't know that. I just shot videos and that's all.
Yeah, but if we just like release shorts and stuff like that, it keeps it interesting.
That's right.
Guys, we'll see you next time.